on now.
It wouldn't be a meeting without the lights missing.
Civic Association. I'd like to welcome you this evening to our land use meeting. First and foremost, I'd like to recognize any elected officials in the room. I know we've got standing room only, but if you'll raise your hands and just acknowledge where you are. We've got Mayor, back to back there, Claire, Eric. Well, thank y'all for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to start with our mayor, if that's all right. He's going to come up and speak to y'all for a little bit. And after him, we'll have Tim Perry speak. And Tim is the managing partner with North American Properties of Atlanta. And he's been with the North American Properties for about 13 years. And he's got a presentation to go over with y'all this evening, okay? So thank y'all so much.
Thank you, man. I will keep this short because you didn't come here to hear me. Mark your calendars. There are a couple things going on in the community. This is one of them. I want to thank UPCCA for a good old-fashioned UPCCA event. Thank you very much for doing this. The second one is May 26th. It's a COPS program. Okay, here's a question. What is the single most lawless thing going on in the community right now? Yeah. So the COPS program, and I would like to see a crowd about this size. We're going to have the new chief of police. How many have met the new chief of police? Okay, one. I met him briefly. You get it? We need to meet these people. The new, what's his name? The new major, West Precinct Major, I forget his name. Mr. Strip Up, yeah, he's going to be here. He's going to be right here. Yeah. 26, May 26th, 7 o'clock is the usual time. Matt, isn't that correct? 7 o'clock? And we're going to have the head of school resource officers. We might as well ask about school safety too. And then it'll be it'll be the crime stats and our own city manager, Brian Johnson, give us an update on the cameras. And I will go ahead and tell you, since everybody in this room obviously can keep a secret, yes, our cameras were very helpful in helping them identify where those street racers were. It's working, and we'll talk about it. Brian will give you an update. The next thing is, it's our 10th, can you believe we've been in the city for 10 years? July 1st is, the festival is going to move their date. It's a big party. Everybody is invited. Please come. So July 1st, but mostly I just wanted to plug the COPS program on May 26th. That's all I wanted to say. Any questions that I can answer before Mr. Curry takes over? Okay. Tim, you want to come on up? Sure. Good.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Mayor, for the introduction. I told Matt when I walked in, I was like, man, we're going to need more chairs. Maybe we should move this into the into the sanctuary, and everyone will be able to sit down. But really do appreciate all of you coming out tonight. And we're pretty casual, North American Properties, so I'm just going to sit up here and talk about some of our plans and what we've done so far. It's only been April 18th, so it's only been about a little over a month since we actually closed on the forum, and it's been a sprint to think through what we want to do. So we went through due diligence, and then for those who don't know North American Properties, what we do as well. So I live 5 miles away. North America is based in Cincinnati, but our Atlanta office has been around since 1996. I've run it for the last couple of years for my predecessor, Mark. And Mark and I, we joined up when we bought Atlantic Station back in the end of 2010 and set to turn it around. Right? There was a big security perception there. And then took what we learned a couple years later, developed Avalon, and honed that skill into investing in communities elsewhere. And right now, we still have Avalon. We purchased property on Lake Norman, north of Charlotte, that's very similar to the Forum, called Birkdale Village. We purchased July of last year, we purchased the Avenue in East Cobb. Again, another very similar, not quite as large property. A few weeks ago, we purchased the Forum, obviously in March 18th. And then a few weeks ago, we just closed on another property actually in Westchester, Connecticut. There were probably a few folks who are relocated down from the New York area called Ridge Hill. They all have the same thing in common. They all have great communities. They all have really strong histories, but they've all also been a victim of not necessarily bad ownership, but just institutional ownership that expects to cut a coupon and doesn't necessarily invest on the operating expense side the way that we have to in order to keep these running. If you wanted to buy a bond, you should buy a bond. If you want to invest in mixed use, retail especially, environment, you've got to pour the coals to it. It is a big team. It is a big team on property. I mean, these fully built out, there'll be 8 or 10 people just at the Forum. A dedicated accountant, dedicated social media, event planners, event coordinators, marketing directors, GMs, assistant GMs. I mean, these are large teams that run these assets. And that's what it takes to be able to execute the kind of environment that is accretive to the entire neighborhood, that lifts, I call it raises the tide. This has been on my morning commute for years. I've driven by it. I've sort of coveted it a little bit and thought, okay, when's AEW going to sell? Because it's just gone, it's deteriorated so much over the past few years. And at a certain point, these can't necessarily be revived, right? When you start getting into the Salvation Armies and you kind of start getting that tenant profile, it chases the rest of them off. You really have to be able to change that perception and right that ship. And what that means is you have to be able to drive sales. So this is all about driving sales. And as I've driven through every day, last March, so more than a year ago, I started calling the owner, hey, come on, let us invest with you. Let us put some money in. Stick with us. Be our partner in this. The city, I know, is doing the same thing, to much to their credit, going to the owner and the previous manager, hey, invest with us. Let us help you. Here are some plans. Here are some thoughts. We want to defend downtown Peachtree Corners as this amazing community amenity that, again, raises all tides. And like a house, people don't move to buy houses just for the bedrooms. They buy a house for the great kitchens where they spend time and cook, and the dining rooms where they hang out and play board games, and living rooms where they socialize with their family and friends. And what great downtowns are those great social places. They're spaces where people convene and play board games in the plaza and spend time at concerts and have great meal options where people kind of get together. And that's driven by development, it's driven by sales, it's driven by density. To give you a quick note, we will increase the operating expenses, our expenses at the Forum by about $2 million a year over what the previous owner invested on an annual basis. Immediate pieces of that, which it's not this easy, but my property management group hates it, like music, lights, uniforms, get to know the tenants. Those are the 4 first steps. There's about $35,000 worth of work underway to repair chewed up speaker wires that are in the flower beds. There are lights and brackets and things that have to be hung to get some lighting and things to go. So we have good music, good lights. You'll start seeing turnover of the vendors and landscaping, all of the things that just need to be elevated. When it's done, 5 years from now, and we'll kind of get to that, when this is all done and downtown Peachtree Corners is an amazing community asset, you're going to look back and you're say, I don't know all the things that were done right. I know what was done wrong. I know it was fixed. And that's our philosophy on the property. If you come and you enjoy it and you have a great day, it's the result of a lot of things that went on, a lot of planning, a lot of investment. If you come and you have a bad time, you know exactly what that is. I'm sure I will hear about it nonstop on Nextdoor. We don't need to have it. We can just do this on Nextdoor, right? North American, this is a very wordy slide, so I do that so you can read and don't listen. We always start with community engagement. One of the first calls we made here was, what's the community interaction here? What's the big thing? Everyone has it just different. The 4th of July is big in Burkdale, in Huntersville, North Carolina. Here, everyone immediately said it's the Glow Run. You got to go to the YMCA. That was one of our first calls. Jumping on that, making sure that we were that home, we were that place, we were that space for that event. And then we listened. We listened really, really closely. In fact, I printed off some of these Nextdoor comments. The benefit of living so close is that I don't have to stalk all of you. You're actually in my normal neighborhood. A hedge fund raised the rent. We didn't buy from a hedge fund. It was a core trust. The forum's been going downhill for years, even before COVID. They want to put it in a liquor store. It's not an optimistic picture. You're right. It was a pretty dire picture. Williams-Sonoma leaving, and even the tenants that were there seeking something to buy into, right? We'll take Lululemon, who's going to stay permanently and expand. There's a reason those tenants do pop-up shops, and it's because they've been in enough dead malls. They're not going to make a long-term lease commitment to stay in one until they know where it's going to go. And that's where the community engagement comes in. A huge draw. We bought our house 6 years ago. I want to know what the plan is for keeping it thriving. We'll get to that in just a second. I'll show you. Lack of landlord capital attract retailers. Absolutely something that was starved. The city should buy the property and change it to an Avalon or have more family open field stuff. We'll do the Avalon if the city wants to pay for it. But sure we'll have a lot of success. This is a huge loss for the tax base of the forum. We need city council and mayor's leadership. Well, I'll tell you, from the minute we started chasing this and called the city of Peachtree Corners and witnessed over the last several years the investment that they have made and the subsidy and the help that they've given to the Peachtree Corners Town Center, the bridge, planting that flag at Peachtree Corners, they are absolutely on your side and have your interest at heart. They're doing a great job, so don't be critical. What's some more? Instead of making 4 separate trips to eat and shop, let's make one, like Avalon. We'll make that happen too. So anyway, good news is you do have an open line of communication to us. We do monitor, our Instagram feeds, our Facebook feeds, and all that other kind of stuff. But don't be too harsh. But we're here to listen and really do read these. So please let us know. One thing that's interesting in here that was a comment someone made is, the forum is suffering because the prior landlord was charging too much rent. Just for a very quick sort of side note, it's not about rent, y'all. It's about sales. About 35% of a tenant's expenses is payroll, another 35% is cost of goods sold, and 10% is G&A, and 10% is rent, and 10% is profit. When their top line sales start suffering, the first thing that goes away is profit. Then comes the quality of the product, the quality of the cost of goods sold. It is all about sales. So when you go to Avalon, and I'm hoping it's so close, most of you have been, and you see the events, it's about getting everyone together and socializing. But from our tenants' perspective, it's about driving sales. And that's what creates a healthy environment. That's what keeps the restaurants that you love in business so you can go back, and the retailers and the people that are there. So that's where we focus on places, not spaces. And I'm sure all of you recognize these from Avalon. It's not about the physical buildings. They've got to be nice. It's got to be significant. It needs to be expressed with the brands, but it's about the space between the buildings. Kaylee Mullen, who's back there somewhere, she's ducking, I'm sure, because I told her I would call her out. She runs our marketing group, so she's responsible for all the different teams and all the different properties, as well as our general managers, and keeping that consistent quality control like we have at Avalon is what she does. And just like Avalon, and just like it takes to drive sales, it takes great downtowns. And downtowns aren't necessarily a property. For a long time, the Forum has been the place marker, right? Where is this located? Oh, it's down by the Forum, right? Where is this? Oh, it's in the Forum area. Well, that narrative is and needs to continue, and we embrace that narrative changing. Where's the Forum? It's in downtown Peachtree Corners, right? And even to the rebranding that we're going through with the Forum, it's still going to be called Forum, but it's not. I'll float this out for public. Forum Peachtree Parkway, maybe not. How about Forum Peachtree Corners? How about that for a great landmark? And how about that as something that cements this as that amenity, that downtown that creates a great community, something you no longer have to leave for, something that people actually come here for. What that takes often, right, here at great spaces, is a mix of uses, right? So it's not just restaurant on an out parcel of a building. That's not mixed use. It's not a 2,000 square foot sandwich shop in the bottom of an apartment building. That's not mixed use. It's really a mix of population and traffic that populates and uses the property 18 hours a day. So I know we've got some mall walkers in here that show up in the morning, walk the loops. Well, you got to be able to get coffee at 6 a.m. or somebody will come in down from their residence or next door who wants to walk their dog at 6 a.m. A great place to have lunch. You'll see as we try this year, but definitely by next year, we'll have signature events. Kind of standard. People like, Tuesday's toddlers. It'll always be on brand. I don't know what it'll be here. We have Little Acorns at Avalon. We have Burkdale Buds. We have something everywhere. Tuesdays for toddlers. Wellness is Wednesdays. Fridays is for live music. And then monthly, there are comedians, there are comedy shows, there's ladies' night out, all that kind of stuff. So that's all there to drive the community interaction and create these 18-hour days. So you have somebody at 6 a.m. walking their dog, at 10 a.m. Doing the stroll or yoga, and at noon it's either meeting for lunch or having someone. Middle afternoon is shopping, and people start leaving work, people start arriving home, they start getting into the restaurants, the entertainment, the cinemas next door. This really is for us. It's never been about the Forum. It's always been about downtown Peachtree Corners. And it's something that I personally drive through every day and personally want to be proud of. In a home to future businesses and residents. So, let's make sure I'm on the right slide here with myself. Ingredients that we were talking about, great downtowns. This is what we do. It takes a great municipality to work with. It takes a great city. But it also, like sales, traffic, municipal partners, great food and beverage, great programming, great activation, great events, great connectivity. And what we like, and unfortunately not all work, but what really also works is the connectivity that has been invested in by here, the city of Peachtree Corners, and the trail systems on East Jones Bridge, the bridge over Peachtree Parkway, the fitness trails and the improvements that have gone on around Peachtree Corners Town Center, and even then jumping over Peachtree Corners Circle and jumping over Middle Up Bridge into future residential developments that will probably take place in those parcels. But there's a tipping point for those who spend any time in town. There's a tipping point when trails flip from being recreational to transit-oriented, pedestrian transit-oriented. There's a point where everyone's on the trail running, and then there's a point where no one can run because it's so busy with people walking to dinner. And that investment by the city in downtown Peachtree Corners and the connection around it is going to drive tremendous value outside that and drive tremendous use and tremendous traffic and sales. So this is our project in Midtown. For those who head into Midtown, Colony Square. It's sort of just a quick example. It's what we delivered in Midtown. They didn't have a downtown. They didn't have a living room. They didn't have a dining room. You might go to Piedmont Park. You might go to a restaurant. But they didn't have the kind of central place for all the residents to commune. And back to, what do you buy in a home? You're not buying the bedrooms, you're buying the kitchens, you're buying the living rooms. And that's what the community community wants. And some other great downtowns, have developed this around us. Downtown Suwanee, which you all see, downtown Sandy Springs. And if you look at all of these, it's not just what maybe the spaces and the places and the parks and the public realm that makes them special. It's also that they have people in them. Downtown Alpharetta over here. Downtown Woodstock, Halcyon. Again, all things that have that same ingredient, and all things that we have proof of concept. The rising tide in each one of these lifts the entire area, lifts the entire community. But likewise, a falling tide can do the same. And unfortunately, for the last several years, the Forum has been a falling tide, and it's not just drugged down its own self, but drugged down that dream of downtown Peachtree Corners, and even drugged down Peachtree Corners Town Center. Some of the tenants over there. The tenants weren't leaving because AEW was asking too much rent. AEW was trying to get the same rent across the street. The tenants were leaving because they couldn't do enough business, just like some of the tenants across the street at Peachtree Corners Town Center are struggling because they're not as well. So here, near and dear to our hearts anyway, is kind of that connectivity you see between Avalon and downtown Alpharetta. Not nearly as close as what we're talking about here with both sides of the street connected by the bridge. But you can see the connectivity, and if you've been up there, and I can tell you from the fact, when we did phase 1 of Avalon, we had sales for tenants here. When we opened phase 2, the sales for all of the tenants, including phase 1, went up. And then when downtown Alpharetta opened, and you had a dozen more restaurants, guess what? All the sales went up again. It really is not about stealing and moving around pieces of the pie. It's creating a bigger pie. And those pieces grow with it, and the community between it. If you look at the townhomes and the development, everything around it, that's been what we call the halo effect around that great community. And then here, we don't have that yet, right? Peachtree Corners Town Center is actually well merchandised. It's got good tenants. It needs more business. It's got a great public lawn that the city programs, but the connection there and the raising of that tide just hasn't quite kicked in yet. And I think we need to do it by really kicking the Forum off and creating density, integrating additional residential, integrating additional hotel where we can bring in additional office, daytime population, and the ability to have residents coming home at the same time residents are going home is what, again, contributes to that 18-hour day. So how about this? I mean, this is quite a connectivity. All really that the city is invested in and in place. This is what connection looks like. It's bike racks. There was an next door comment about somebody wanting to move the bike racks away from the trash bins and actually onto the boulevard. Noted. Baby strollers, and for those who want to go out for a run, those who want to go out to dinner, it's really creating a downtown as the amenity and as the option. So here's sort of the quick overview of what delivering that experience looks like. This is the evolution of several deals. This is creation of the living room and the dining room. It's a little bit out of scale, and I'll show you some detail here in a second. But a friendlier down in this end, where you had the old Panukins, putting in a food hall, raising the traffic tables, creating great space in the middle, a little more fun, friendly, great patios in the corner, followed by some parking, followed by a little bit more of a living room, and place again, playing board games on the table, and then the plaza. And while it may not look so here, and I'll show you some about this in a minute, it's actually a tad bit larger than Avalon, which we have found through several evolutions just to be the right size. You want it to feel crowded, because that means you want to be there, it feels good, but you don't want it to be too crowded that it's uncomfortable. And then we move about 200 spaces. We'll move about 200 spaces out of the Parkway, and those have to be replaced. We contemplate doing that with a parking structure back by Belk. And what's shown here is about 3 stories. It's about 5 feet taller than Belk, so it's not some massive structure that was intentionally kept low. We'll actually have to do some grading to keep it low so that we didn't interfere. And the discussions, I think, with the city already, and I think the city with Fields neighborhoods behind it has been dressing the back of that with green walls and solid walls so that it's not offensive or troublesome to view. So this is as rendered. You can see pulling some of the patio spaces out. So for those who have been to Roomies, for instance at Avalon, you're able to walk kind of between that patio space and the storefront, creating great energy, removes a few spaces, but keeping the parking for those who use home goods. And by the way, this is my family's Mexican restaurant, my family's hibachi restaurant, and we all know it's the best home goods in North Fulton County, right? See, some jewel box retail here in the center, and then you see here the connectivity for the deck for the ease of access. You can obviously get parking here. You can come straight off of Peachtree Corner straight into it, or you can come off Feastone's Bridge, come behind the building into it. So easy access and easy pedestrian access into the plaza. This building here models after Avalon's concierge. So full concierge, and again, the operating expenses we've added to the programming here mirror the experience that you have at Avalon. So it's full concierge. Who's excited about public restrooms? I got that comment on too. Yeah? Come on. That's it? So concierge, little thing here. Concierge here, public restrooms, little stage, and we've started incorporating technology. So even at Avalon, this week actually we put in new kiosks. You see all that incorporated here. And then jewel boxes on down, and then down here. So there's an element of, I know that there's a convenience to being able to pull up at certain times and run in and grab something. So removing all the parking wasn't something that we really contemplated, but keeping it sort of close enough at the right place, taking out some of the parallel parking to create big, large sidewalks, and other places taking it out in the center to create great green space and sort of break that up so that who has walked down to, I don't know, somewhere, who's walked somewhere about right here and looked down the street and said, there's nothing, turn around. We all have probably, and we've seen people do it. And so we've got to create some sort of magnetism to go all the way down and really embrace all those tenants, and so that their sales don't continue to suffer as well. Here's sort of the rendering of the plaza itself. Like I said, we started putting these TV, these are like 18 by 24, 16 by 22 screens that we were able to use them for events, we were able to use them for watch parties, we were able to use them for movie nights, we were able to use them for all sorts of things. And you're constantly having to reinvest. Not everyone, ownership-wise, understands that. So this overhang here, we're actually, sorry, that's on our capital plan this year for Avalon as well, so sneak peek. No one else knows that yet. That was Kaylee's wish. Anyway, so great plaza. Again, this is kind of the walk right here by Grace to get you there. Concierge, public restrooms. Some of the $2 million we've already invested has been increasing our security by about 100 hours a week on site. It's just what we do. We have an internal head of security who ran security for us at Atlantic Station and has continued to do so. So you may not always see it, but all the security officers, everyone who's on our property actually gets interviewed by our general manager, regardless of whether it's a third-party vendor or not. We run all our concierge, and it doesn't matter what company is what, you'll never see all those different brands on the people that are here to serve you. And we operate it like it's Disney. So without fail, I work they challenge me every week to work in the word leaf blower to my speech. And I'm telling you, you show up at these properties and it feels like the leaf blowers just chase you around because they're there all day. It's constant. They do landscaping 7 to 10 a.m. every day. That's when the landscaping is there. At 10 o'clock, the park opens. And that's it. It doesn't matter if you're loading in sheetrock to build out a tenant, or if you've got groceries, or if at 10 o'clock the park opens, get your truck out. This is now yours, not ours. And that's the way we see it. This is some of the outside dining, which would be across from the concierge building, the stage, and the plaza. Again, creating that kind of great space, slowing traffic down as it goes through. And this is something we pictured looking like the food hall here. And then this kind of playful space. These bricks that you see what that does is, go to Avalon. If you've never noticed it, you will now. It raises the street up so that there are no curbs. And what that does is it really makes it easy to get through and step from curb where there are no curbs, slows down traffic and extends the plaza so that you get more of a feeling of public space. This is the center. These are probably more retail oriented. So some games and that kind of stuff in the middle, great music, but a place again that breaks up that parking as you kind of stroll down through the property. And then kind of coming back to this, how it all rolls back together. And as it all rolls back together into one where, again, there's parking where you need, there's parking here with a lot of access into Central Plaza. These purple boxes are all exterior patios, and then kind of, again, breaking up this parking and creating a reason to walk all the way down the boulevard. But like I said, we did not ever think just about the forum. We thought about this entire downtown holistically. Thought about traffic, which retail, hopefully it makes it a little bit worse. And we thought about connectivity, and then we thought about how we would need to layer in what is really critical, which is additional residential use, and what would not be, overly intrusive on the community, but would provide that mix of housing, that mix of people that you have on site. Walkability and sales are driven by density. Unfortunately, everyone getting in their car and showing up doesn't support what you all want there. So having people on site does, and this is very similar to what we have at Avalon and all the renderings. At Avalon, we have 576 units. The average age is over 50 years old. Average household income is over $200,000 a year. One kid gets on a bus. One. These are not 3 bedrooms. These are 1, 2 bedrooms. These are young professionals who want to come and have jobs, or want to work at Intuitive or one of the other great employers, or as the young families move in and pay you over list price, as they are doing these days, you want somewhere that you can go, and you probably have a really good, enjoying time and great year or 2 years. You want to stay next to the grandkids. You want to stay next to your doctor. Maybe you have a place at the beach, the mountains, but there's a need for this. People stay a little bit longer at Avalon, and those demographics continue to improve and change, but it's not something that is virtually, it's really an addition. And again, it's not just on the forum, like this really grows and raises the entire tide, creates a very successful amenity that recruits for downtown. So as layered in here, some of these different slides, kind of see as rendered. Something out here intentionally along 141 that kind of gives us a mass on both sides. A hotel over here. As some of you remember, when this was originally zoned, I should have said this, when we put the forum under contract, the very next thing we did was put this piece of property over here under contract and go to the city and say, all right, we've done this a few times. We love your help, love your support. How can we do all this together? How can we not have multiple different developers and architectural styles and connections and fights and arguments and zoning conditions? Let's do it once, right? Let's do it once, let's get it right, and let's finish it. Let's take this leadership group that we have, this community we have, and finish it. So 5 years down the road, we have a Peachtree Corners downtown. And what this doesn't show is conversations we've had. We'd love to find a place where we could also develop some office and carve out an element for, they're under the city's cultural arts center and some things that they really want to get behind. We've just got to figure out where to do it, how to do it. And then from on brand, let's see, so here's the hotel. This was, for those who might remember, there was a hotel that was part of this zoning over here. We dodged a bullet with that in a good way. I travel a fair amount. If I'm a doctor or a surgeon coming in to train down at Intuitive, or I'm here for business, and I'm staying here in a hotel, it's got a great rooftop deck, it's wonderful, it's a boutique. I'm still gonna get in an Uber to go here, right? Because you don't understand how it connects. Those hotels need to be incorporated into great downtowns and town centers. Now, at the time that was done, the forum wasn't in play. It was sitting over there with ownership that was just wanting to collect coupons. But now that all of it's put together, it's all in play, that option has become available, and we can, again, for the first time, with all of this put together, just us in the city, do it right, do what was meant to be done. On brand with the hotel, these are renderings. If you've been to a hotel at Avalon, you'll recognize the one at the top. You know who uses hotels? Kids for birthday parties. Guests use them during the week for, or not guests, businesses use them during the week for business travel. They're also a great place to put up in-laws. They're a great place to run away from the kids. If y'all were all honest, most of you have probably done a staycation at the Hotel Avalon and just said, we'll leave the kids there, we're going to go, it's going to be a ladies' night out. It's a great experience, and interestingly, as we recovered from the pandemic at Avalon, anecdotally, while the weekday travel was really slow to return, by July 1st of 2020, only 2 months after the stay-at-home was lifted, the Hotel Avalon was 100% occupied on the weekends. 100%. Because people were looking for a place to get out and enjoy the plaza and enjoy it. The hotel, on brand, it's got to have a rooftop deck. There are a lot of different brands, there are a lot of different flags and all that kind of stuff, but this is kind of the element, enjoying the outside. Also to note, and you can see it in this picture and in the next one, there's some landscaping, great myrtles, that are probably going to come out, that will come out as we create these great places at Forum, but otherwise, we're not cutting down a tree. The land that's been cleared, the work that's been done has been forward-thinking, and what's dropping in here is a tree. So the architectural design, right, a little bit more sleek and integrated, and really in the middle of the action, overlooking the boulevard on the Forum side, and much more soft, natural, homey, lodgy, as you get into where all the nature is and where the trees are, and the walking paths that connect all of this. These residents, unlike if I was staying at this hotel, I wouldn't know how to get to the town center. These residents, they're going to go to the pool, they're going to meet a neighbor, they're going to have some wine that probably snuck in their little corksicle out to the pool, and then they're going to walk on the trail, and they're going to go over and they're going to watch a movie. And we're going to have a healthy Peachtree Corners Town Center, because it's not as healthy as it may look today. Again, wooded and trails. Here's sort of the rendering as you enter off of Peachtree Parkway, heading down to the fountain. Same corner. Notice again, rooftop elements, great decks, patios. These are renters by choice. These are, again, 50 years, $200,000 household incomes. These are, interestingly, some of you you sell your big house because you're an empty nester, and say, I'm going to live above the store for a year and really party it out, and then I'm going to buy something else. And then you turn around and buy something else, and they're so expensive, you end up just staying in Avalon. And that happens a lot, right? It's like, there's a mental block of, hey, I sold my $1 million home, and now I've got to buy a townhome half the size for the same price. I'm just going to wait it out and see. So people seem to stay longer. And then here's sort of that lodge here, mix of materials, look across as it's incorporated into the wood, it's kind of the more natural setting. Timeline-wise, it's important that all of this really work together. So phase 1 here is the boulevard. You kind of see things opening. Then the tenants hand over. It takes 5 or 6 months for the tenants to start working on their space. About the time that the tenants start opening, the town center residential, which is what's required to support it. You got to get people out there in the plaza, buying ice cream, buying beers, drinking wine, eating steaks. All of the momentum that we've leased into, it has to be used. And then about the time that starts to lease up, we come in with this space, which includes the hotel. It all has to be built at once with the topography and structured decks and everything, and really lay on that extra element. So at that time, kind of going back to this, what you have fully built out 5 years from now is what at least our vision with some community engagement, and hope to get more from you, has become. So that's actually what we've got. Oops. I was going to go back, I was going to leave that out. So that's what we've done so far. And it's moved at light speed. speed, and I appreciate all your support and questions. So, yes, sir. Do we have a microphone?
Everybody stand up and speak to it, please, so we can hear you better.
Everything I've heard so far tonight is very good, but as a resident of the general area, how are we in the community going to keep pace with what you're doing?
I'm sorry, how are you going to keep pace? How are you going to keep it? Great question. So over the next 90, 120 days, we're going to be going through city processes. I mean, the zoning, the entitlements, and all the reviews, all of the input and work and help that we get from the city. Again, the forward thinking of this, the council, there may be some that are critical of the bridge, but I'm telling you, it's such a key component. Those letters on that bridge planted that flag. So over the next few months, it'll be stuff that's read. But we have a very, very engaged social media. So I'll be happy to answer questions on Nextdoor since I live so close. But if you follow our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, we try to be really, really good at communicating, especially when there are things that are inconvenient. So, and at certain points, we don't announce tenants until we have leases signed. So as we sign leases, we'll announce what's going where. And then over time, you'll see, we'll release renderings. When a tenant signs a lease, we then get into their storefront design. So instead of sort of that drab, same exact color all the way along the facade, each storefront will express its brand. So, Sephora's storefront looks different than a Lululemon storefront, looks different than, whatever else storefront. And so each one of those, we'll share all of that. Share all of that online. But if you ever have any questions, reach out to me. Yes, sir.
You mentioned housing units. Are those rented or owned?
Those are rented. They're all rented. We don't do owned, and Oh, he asked if the residential units we mentioned were rental or owned. So we don't do owned. In the dense, there's a reason like that. There are rentals at Avalon. The reason there are rentals in downtown Alpharetta. The restaurants really need something to turn over. So you have a whole new set of diners, a whole new set of patrons every year as that rolls, and it's kind of a big part of why these downtowns work. And it's something that not everyone agrees with that, but it's what we've proven to ourselves and proven with the success of our tenants in those other communities. Outside of that, the halo, you don't see outside of Avalon, downtown Alpharetta, a lot of other rental communities. What you see is that residential growth. So, hey, I moved in, now I'm ready to buy that townhouse. I'm not going to go far. I'm going to go where I can still walk over here. I just want a little bit more space.
Here we are, right here.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Have you done any traffic impact studies relative to all of this development, the increase in residents?
So traffic impact studies are part of the zoning submission. That's underway. They're already underway because of the traffic circle that was proposed on Peachtree Corner Circle. So that's all part of our zoning package that we'll have to put. The residential units don't add nearly the traffic you would think. Hopefully, the success of Town Center creates a little bit of additional traffic, but it's, like I said, again, that's healthy. Without the traffic, no one's there, and we end up in a dead mall. And the last thing Peachtree Corners wants to be is going to a place. Yes, sir.
I was wondering.
Oh, sorry.
So you've run your pro forma, this is not your first time on this. How many units? Talk to the units, talk to us about the timeline and the number of units that come online when, and the density of the hotel. You showed a rendering that has a 300, you said that you are moving X number of parking spaces out, and I think you said you had a 300 car parking deck. Is that parking deck strictly for the hotel, for us to come shop, or is it also combined with the special parking spaces for the residents, your renters?
All the residential development has to self-park. So when I say we took out 200 spaces of diagonal and stuff in the middle and replaced it with 300, that's purely for the commercial parking. So it's actually increasing the amount of parking at the Forum. As the hotel, boutique hotels typically fall around 125 or 150 rooms. And then multifamily developments, while still in design, what we've got is renderings, kind of always fall in the mid 200 range. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Per development. And again, we have 576 units at Avalon, and it's a great balance and a great mix of the density you need. Not that we're solving for that number. There's someone back there.
The gentleman asked his question.
Okay.
I've got a couple of questions. I work at the Forum. I've been there for 16 years, so I've seen it all. A couple of things with the parking. Where's the parking deck going to be? You said around Belk, but I understand that the lighting back there has to be lower because of the housing behind there. That's one question I've got. Two, are they going to put a traffic light at the exit at the end where Trader Joe's is? Because getting in and out of there is pretty bad.
Oh, it's horrible. I sat there for like 10 minutes yesterday. Yeah.
Another thing, this is going to sound weird. Are you going to have external cameras around the property?
So
because there are none, and there was an incident 2 years ago that I got involved in that was pretty nasty. It would have been nice had we had cameras there. And the other thing is the housing. Is that going to be on the top of the stores?
So, don't let me forget to answer these. It's impossible to turn left by Trader Joe's. That's where not by us, that we were told of this when we bought it. There's a contemplated traffic circle, and I know that there are traffic studies going on that would ease the exit for that, especially with the condominium units that were recently zoned directly across from that entrance behind the daycare that's over there. So there are some traffic improvements underway. I think it's probably too close for it to be a lighted intersection to 141, but that concern is heard. Cameras, we do typically have a security camera program. Depends on how many, where the tenants have theirs and what integrates and how it ties in. It's all part of the security plan. So it's not as easy as just throwing up a few cameras. You've got to get it all to a dispatch. You have to have extra security that monitors the dispatch. And it does help from time to time. I think in 8 years at Avalon, these security cameras have solved 0 crimes. And believe it or not, cars get stolen out of those decks and they get broken into. And I'm pretty sure 100% of the time that when you capture the license plates, it's stolen or it's rented. And I doubt Hertz is, grabbing stuff at Avalon. So we put them in where we have public spaces. As far as the parking deck and road, that's good. I mean, I think and this is something I think the city has already discussed, at least some of the fields. Making the rear wall of that parking so that it's not open, so that it's shielded, and using lights that we can actually dim and change at different times of the day on timers. So.
And then she mentioned where the residential is on top, or.
Oh yeah. So some tenants roll over, and the reason for some of the timing is that there are leases in place. So a big box like Barnes we would want to downsize them and a little bit less space and kind of shorten that up, and then build where you've got that big grade change between Peachtree Parkway and the parking lot below it, and put the parking so that it's kind of buried in there and take advantage of that piece. So a little bit over the retail, but we're not tearing down or overbuilding all of that strip. Might be very little, just kind of on the corner.
My general manager asked one question too. Are you going to have standardized opening and closing for the different stores? Will everybody have to agree to different opening and closing?
I wish. I kind of wish we could, because that makes it a little bit easier to operate. But it's different in every lease. We try to get people open as late as possible, which again adds operating expenses to their business. We're trying to get them so that the property doesn't close or feel closed. And then another big part of that is merchandising. So where exactly the restaurants are and where those patios are and how they're enclosed in the inclement months during the winter, And what it sounds like and feels like as you walk takes those runs where you might have a lot of retail, soft goods retail that close, and you're not walking too far away from one patio or restaurant where there's activity before you're hearing and stepping into that next sort of cone of the one that's a few doors down. So we try to kind of keep that connectivity so that it always feels like an active property. And lease by lease, retailers' opening hours and closing hours are set.
I have a question about small businesses. I noticed we've got lots of big national chains and large companies. I think people would really enjoy having some local owners and small businesses. Do you have some kind of incentive or assistance or a plan to bring local owners into the space?
So two things that we do. I would love every local boutique to be in here and them all be successful. And we have done this years and years and years and years. It costs money to go into business, and then it's there for a few months. And often, knock on Peachtree Corners, communities are like this. You go when it opens, and then you sort of don't go as much, right? And so the longevity is not there. So we do have spaces, especially when a tenant may have moved out, and it may be 6, 9, 12 months before another tenant moves in. So if you looked at Fuzzy Wigs that closed at Avalon, the cutting board lady moved in there. If you looked at Pottery Barn Kids that closed, we had a holiday market, we had temporary tenants in that space. Because there's always big gaps. They're substantial gaps usually between a tenant closing and a new tenant opening. We have an ancillary revenue, ancillary leasing team, specialty leasing team that specifically focuses on that. You can go in, you can take improvements and use the shelves and that, put signs up, and absolutely plug in local merchants. And if they survive and they want space more permanently, that's great. We'd love to work with them. So we do that. It keeps the cost down from the local business perspective. They don't have to put a ton of money in their space, and they don't have to pay some huge, enormous rent. A small percentage of sales or something to offset some of the costs. But it does keep it healthy. And then on the end next to Aomi, and we're going to put the food hall. The retail there will probably end up being a little smaller. When I say smaller, I mean there are a couple that are 400, 300, 200 square feet. And it lets us do it a little bit more seasonally because no one wants a snow cone in winter, no one wants hot chocolate in the summer, right? So as the space gets programmed seasonally, it might be boozy hot chocolate in the winter, and it might be a spiked snow cone in the summer or cotton candy, but it lets us do something a little bit more programmatic and a little bit more intentional with the space.
Where are the residents of the rental units going to be parking?
Underneath their buildings. And nested so that it is totally sequestered.
Hi there. I'm a resident of Amberfield, and my home actually backs directly up to the Forum. Can you talk a little bit about construction, noise, the changes that these are bringing to the community and the impacts to Amberfield residents in particular?
Sure. Erecting a parking deck is unfortunately not quiet, but it is something that we will do, and we'll work with the fields and the community and the city to limit when the construction periods of that is, so we're not waking up babies at 5 a.m. and we're not, we already get calls about the waste management showing up and grabbing the dumpsters at 6:50 instead of 7. So it's something that we're conscious of. So we can control the timing of that. And then the other piece is that all the new density and a lot of construction is away from. Right? So we didn't say, let's take these back parcels behind Trader Joe's or behind Belk and put density there. Right? So just kind of trying to maintain that sort of that observation plane and that density plane going from the lower density single family toward 141 and toward Peachtree Parkway, where the new density should be is on ULI 101. And maintaining that plane and that sort of density grade was all part of what we put into it. And there was a reason I said that the deck is only maybe 7 feet, but it's 5 or 7 feet taller than Belk. This is not going to be some huge towering imposing structure you're going to see over the streets in summer. And it's something we'll screen.
Some of us just lived through a rather disruptive expansion of the Farrell Creek sewer system. So I'm wondering whether this is an answer that you have or whether Mayor Mason does, but is there a plan or are the utility systems in place to accommodate this, or is that a part of your construction plan? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I do not have an answer for that tonight, but it's something we can follow up on. I would have to go with our mechanical engineers and get with the city. I don't have an answer tonight, I'm sorry. Yes, sir, in the back. All the way back.
Hi there. I'm just curious the tenant mix that you're targeting. We love Avalon, we go all the time, and so I know there are a lot of luxury brands over there, and I'm sure you've done your research on demographics, so I'm curious what you're trying to bring in here, even restaurant-wise and shopping, and just curious. And I know you can't comment on what leases you are close to, but just curious what you're targeting.
Sure. Again, thinking holistically, right? The town center merchandising plan is very much sort of like the merchandising around Avalon. It didn't have the critical mass, and the city very wisely made it sort of target toward the quick service restaurants and the unit mixes there, daily needs and services, that kind of stuff. The soft goods tenants like to be around other soft goods tenants, so there's a critical mass to it. The only place that you've got that is really at the Forum. So that soft goods mix from Avalon and some of the tenants that are there will jump over the Chattahoochee River, which is a major barrier. There aren't that many bridges, right? So it makes it a long way sometimes to go from one to the other. But the tenant mix that we have at Avalon is the same target tenant mix as the Avenue, is the same sort of target tenant mix as the Forum. So not everyone has, a lot of retailers have a larger draw, right? So it's a little bit more of a magnet, so they may not be in 3, or maybe just in 1. And then the other would be the shift-driven restaurant. That restaurant type tenant that you have at Avalon wants that high finish and wants that kind of brand alignment, and needs that evening person coming downstairs and eating steaks. You go to Coletta in the summer and Oak in the winter, and 25% of the people you see in there will be residents who walked there from Avalon. And so they need that density, and they need to be on brand with it. So that's kind of how the merchandising lays out. And a quick elaboration, the original lifestyle center, right, before they started putting them up across from malls and stealing all the tenants, was really Avenue East Cobb, one of the very first ones. And if you look at it on a map, it's almost equidistant from Town Center Mall, North Point Mall, Cumberland Mall, Perimeter Mall. It filled the whole of the donut. Like, you no longer had to leave to go to Gap or Limited 2. You could get it right there. So it was really that whole donut. The gentleman who did the leasing and the concept for the Avenue East Cobb is named Ron Fole. Ron left Cousins, who did that, and he formed a Forum Development Company. And he saw the same thing. So he looked right up the street here, and he said, okay, I don't have to go at that time to Gwinnett Place, I don't have to go to North Point, I don't have to go to Perimeter. The people who live here don't have to cross the river to go to Gap or Limited 2, right? Or in that case, it was a little bit different merchant, to Williams-Sonoma Pottery Barn. So again, it was the hole in the donut. There was the population of people here in the community to support it. And then Ron actually, after that, joined us, Atlantic Station. He merchandised Avalon. Unfortunately, about a year ago, he passed away. But that was the original business thesis for the Forum, and it's why it's so unfortunate that it's gone downhill, because that business base and that business thesis still rings true today. It just needs to be modernized, and it just needs to be the density. It just needs to have the draw that tenants today need and require.
So do you have any kind of rough cut metrics? I'm trying to figure out where we are now and where we're going. So in terms of, like, now I think of parking, number of retail establishments, number of restaurants, that's where we are now, and it's just a Forum. And in the future, we'll have some other numbers, and including the old Charlie Roberts property. Can you kind of summarize that? It might be hard, I know, but give us a cut.
I don't know how to have that broken down. In parking, like I said, any sort of additional use will be parking, and I'd have to get with our development. I'm just getting the math in my head right now. Where some of the spaces, as they roll over, will get shallow. And so you lose square footage, and then if you take all those jewel boxes in the middle, you're probably only adding 10,000 feet, so you're probably reducing the overall gross square footage at the Forum. And it was originally built for, I mean, just from the retail standpoint, the commercial. And it was originally built to have a lot more restaurants than it does today. So there's a lot of parking there today that's not as used, because a restaurant does park at a higher ratio than a soft goods retail. So it's probably overparked today given the tenant mix, and we'll kind of build into that. And you know, again, we know that, well, we hope, we believe that the events, the activation, the community engagement is going to drive more people, more traffic, which is why we're adding the extra 100 spaces in the additional replacement parking. And then again, all the other uses have to park themselves. Yes, sir?
Will the parking deck go up before the parking spaces go away?
Oh, that's a great question. It is quite the dance. So, sequencing-wise,
what was this question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. His question was, will the parking decks go up before you take out all the parking? So, great question. Sequencing-wise, we'll start down next to the office building, down where Naomi and that kind of stuff is, because there's already vacancy down there and a lot of that parking is not used. So you can start there, taking out some of the parking. To get a parking deck designed, ordered, delivered on site, and assembled is, unfortunately, I don't use that supply chain thing, it's overused. It should be a drinking game, right? It takes about a year. So we've got to start where we've got capacity and parking down on that end and sort of start working our way through, so that by the time we get to the plaza and we really impact the parking around that, the deck is finished. So sequencing-wise, we're taking that into account and not having those troughs. We've taken out a whole bunch of parking that we haven't yet replaced. It won't be perfect, but there is a balance that we're trying to work toward.
All of the proposed or the details of the plan, the number of residents, the number of hotel rooms, and whatnot, this may be a very stupid question, I apologize for that. Has all of this been reviewed and approved by the city already? This is just a done deed, your full scheme ahead, and what you presented is what we're getting? Or is this subject to review, or has it already been reviewed by the city and accepted and approved and it's done?
No, we don't. We've been working since before we closed during due diligence with the city on what they want. And actually, interestingly, when we went and said, the first question is, what do you want? Just kind of like we read next door, what do all y'all want? And the city planning department actually produced, and it just had green grass down the middle and a parking deck in the back, because public realm is just so important to the future of the Forum, the future of merchandising. So there have been a lot of discussions with the city, right? But we have not yet filed for our meter zoning application. Yes, sir?
I've got two questions. The first is there going to be any space made by the food hall for rotating food trucks? Because that's a popular thing in a lot of destinations. And the second is, were there any considerations for doing things like artists markets or farmers markets and that sort of thing?
Yes, both. We try, early on, right, when we're trying to support the events, there will be more use of food trucks and that kind of stuff. But then later, we actually try to work with our tenants and again drive sales and keep them healthy. Same with all the events, whether it's the artisans market, that kind of stuff. We're really good at taking, to the question earlier, vacant spaces, especially on the holidays, doing holiday markets. The sales numbers are huge. Getting local people in, and we have special leasing that does just that. We even have some spaces, and we haven't thought about that here yet, where we actually design spaces and build it out to be smaller tenants and more like artisans markets that are ongoing. But all the events that we do, we get tons of requests from people, hey, I want to come do this at Avalon. And we say no to most, not all, because if there's something that we have on property, if someone wants to come and hold yoga, you know what, Athleta and Lululemon have first dibs on it, right? So we really try our best to get the tenants pulled out. The relationship between the landlord and tenant 10 years ago was, edge and below off the sidewalks and mow the grass. Now it is really, hey, how do I help you create the experience that's going to help people come in your store and enhance your brand? So yeah, we do both.
We'll take a couple more questions, and we got one over here.
Just a quick question or two. Are the parking places behind Belk's, behind Trader Joe's, going to remain? And when you take out the parking spaces, will that alleviate the bottlenecks that happen with trying to come into the Forum, buy home goods, and when you try to go down the far end by La Paria, there's always bottlenecks of people backing up trying to find a parking spot. And then the other thing is, there will be no charge to park on the main boulevard, or will there be? Because I think that's a negative with Avalon.
Well, so it's actually it's a huge positive Avalon, not for the revenue, but so that the person who shows up in the morning and opens that retail store doesn't park their car there and spend all day there, keeping that space from being used by you. That's the reason that we charge for parking at Avalon, and it's given away. And it's not a huge number, it's not a huge revenue, but it is intentional to get those spaces to turn over. So that's something that cities do. I mean, it's kind of a ULI. Maybe it's wrong, but it's something that we do, and that's why we do it there. There's not going to be a charge that we've even talked about or contemplated at the Forum, other than valet, which is a charge to valet. Not like this valet. And then bottlenecks in parking. As long as people want to circle and look for that first spot, there'll probably always be some. But by taking some of the parking out of the middle, and I think that would slow it down some. The position of the parking deck where it is on the north side of Belk was intentional, so you can get straight in through the fountain off Peachtree Parkway, so you can come in from the Forum office building behind the building, and so you can come in from the Trader Joe's side, so you don't have to funnel in the middle of the property. As far as the lot behind Trader Joe's, we don't have any plans for that lot. That entire kind of area over there serves a great active daily needs and services, groceries, burritos, Pilates, salads, great place to pull in, get what you need, and get out. And so I think that's a critical component of how that whole town center.
Hi, I would guess most of the people in here are homeowners or owners within about a mile of the Forum. I live in Amberfield, and I'll speak for myself, learning that apartments are going to be put in, I don't know, quarter of a mile from my house is never exciting. I bet you would feel the same way. Do you have any data on what this will do to our property values, or have you done something like this in an established neighborhood with so many homes? And do you have anything to share with us about the impact it'll have on us?
I can only say this. When we developed a single-family residential in Avalon, the sales price was 3 times the average in Alpharetta. Townhomes between downtown Alpharetta and Avalon, as you get closer to each one of those ends, are multi-million dollars and move forward. So the attractiveness of a healthy downtown amenity brings families, brings people wanting to buy houses, increases demand. We all be happy to pull some stuff from Alpharetta and around Avalon, but that halo has created tremendous value for homeowners. My mother-in-law lives in the townhomes directly across West Side Parkway on the backside of Avalon, and even her little flat has appreciated, as 50%, a huge amount, just because they put in a gate that you can walk across the street and get there. So it's back to that halo and the connectivity and that walkability. It doesn't have that effect if it was on the other side of 400. It wouldn't have that effect if it was, a mile away. But when you get into that really dense core, a healthy downtown and healthy restaurants, and that walkability, people using the trail right along East Jones Bridge to get from Amberfield and go there on their feet or on their bikes for dinner instead of getting in their cars. That's the connectivity and the location, the proximity. You're in luck living so close, because that magnet, and I believe, and I think we've shown in the markets, increases home values. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say I'm Amy Massey, and I coordinate the Light Up Corners race, and I just want to say that I'm really excited and appreciate your investment in our community, and I'm really excited about it.
Nice to meet you in person. I know that Kaylee and everyone's been Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I just wanted to ask, while you're talking about events over at the Forum, how are you coordinating that with the town center, which is across the street? And I don't know if there's still plans to do an amphitheater over there.
I'm not sure about amphitheater plans over there. I haven't seen or heard that. I know they continue to enhance the Oval and that park and programming. That's coordination from us. It's back to, we are not competitors. What is good for Peachtree Corners Town Center and what is good for the east side of 141 is good for the other. And likewise, just as the Forum could have listed everything, you've seen the deterioration of the Forum impact everything. So it's to all of our benefit to coordinate those to the same time. Again, Kaylee, who's right back there in the back. Wait, Kaylee. That's it. She and her team make sure that all of that is coordinated with the city, and I've already been in touch with her. So, in a perfect world, in the near future, about 5 years from now, when you see an event going on at the town center at the Oval, you're going to see people walking across the bridge to get there. That's what we want to have happen.
One last question, and then we'll close for the evening.
How about the gentleman back there?
We'll take two then.
Sorry, we chose different.
That's right.
Thank you. I'm excited about you coming here too, by the way, and I've been really impressed with the developments that you guys have done that we all know and you mentioned here in Atlanta. You mentioned halo effect in particular about the immediate adjacency for residential, but I'm curious about the complementary halo effect that it has on other communities. I live in downtown Norcross. We're excited about what can potentially happen as a result of your development here. If you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, just go back to what the effect on everything along Thompson Street between downtown Alpharetta, downtown Norcross, and the property, and connectivity along the Meadowlark Bridge, how you get there is going to be important. But it only, again, the tide as we delivered phase 2 at Avalon, phase 1 did better. As downtown Alpharetta did better, Avalon did better. As Avalon continued to do even better, downtown Alpharetta continued to do better. So it really is about the pie. Right? And the more desirable this anchor, the more desirable this creates is it's socially magnetic and where people want to live, where young families want to come and raise their kids and invest in their homes, right? Where that happens and that'll continue happening, connecting what are two great downtowns. Downtown Norcross is outstanding as well.
Last question here.
Can you just clarify one thing? Maybe I misunderstood you. With the mixed housing and all, are they going to have apartments on top of the stores? Are they going to build them on top of stores?
There may, on the corner, there may be some apartments that go over, like where if you've seen the renderings, you still have that rotunda where Barnes and Noble is, and the store that extends back. So it's mainly there along the street where you have the grade. To the extent where we shallow that box up, they might move forward some. But we're not tearing down any big, huge runs of buildings and rebuilding anything.
But some housing will be on top of stores.
Barnes and Noble will downsize at some point in the future, and if that happens, we would downsize them underneath the apartment building. With that little storefronts, all that I could feasibly see would even be feasible.
On that side of the street.
Yeah, everything's on 141. The density needs to go along the major thoroughfares.
Well, I'd like to thank Tim for being here with his time this evening. We really appreciate it. I'd like to thank you all for being here this evening. Please don't forget, next Thursday, 7 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel right here. We're going to have our COPS program. The mayor will be speaking. We'll have school resource officers, the Gwinnett County PD, our local West Precinct, Major Restrepo, along with our new chief of police for you to meet. Thank y'all so much and have a great night.